decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here with you for the next couple of hours talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Certainly no shortage of things to talk about as it pertains to the hometown team. Nice to see so many of you this morning. So many of you were here last night, and they're back again a few hours later, and we greatly appreciate your support. What we ask of you, a few different things. Number one, smash that like button. You know how to do it. You've probably already done it. Do it again if you haven't already done so. Number two.
You can actually only like once, Drew.
Thank you, Ezra.
Yeah, if you actually do it again, you would actually unlike the show, Drew.
Yeah.
I'm unliking both of you at the moment. That much I can assure you of.
I guess you could, like from different Gmail accounts, though.
That's true. You can. Thank you. You guys are very, very contributing.
So what we need you to do, guys, everybody that's listening, create some fake accounts and then like from all of those different accounts. That'll help us out.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Subscribe to our show via podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Wherever you get your best podcasts, that's where you can find the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And of course, rate us, review us, leave some comments, have a nice time in the chat. Keep it friendly. It is, after all, the holiday season. We want everybody to be in a good mood. Most Jets fans aren't in a good mood as the team again lost last night, a 5-2 defeat at the hands of the Washington
Beauty
Capitals.
Segue there, Drew.
Thank you. We talked a lot about the game last night already on the Illegal Curve post-game show. If you missed any of that analysis, by all means, you can check it out. It's available on our YouTube page. It's available in podcast form. We'll do another post-game show tomorrow afternoon following the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. You know, gentlemen, it was about less than 24 hours, probably about 23 hours or so ago yesterday when the absolute news bomb was dropped that Paul Maurice had resigned as Winnipeg Jets head coach. And now that we're sort of out of the fog of the immediacy of the moment, the timing of it and how it all went down makes even less sense to me today than it did yesterday. You know, on a game day when you had 2 days off before, the head coach comes in and announces that he's no longer going to be the head coach. I think it was probably time. There's no question it was time. It was probably beyond time that it needed to happen. But everybody had wore a warm and smiley face about it. Something about that to me, though, lingers negatively. I don't think that there's more here than there was. I don't think there's something necessarily sinister or that there is something else at play. But I think the timing of it all, as I consider it a little bit more, stinks a little bit more as I think about it.
It definitely doesn't make more sense, right, guys? It's not like, we had a night's sleep and we woke up and, we understand why it was done that way. I think, there's the truth and then there's both sides of the story, right? And we don't know what happened, let's say from Thursday morning to Thursday night, because, Drew mentioned, Wednesday, the bag skate, you knew that the Jets weren't going to be given, preferential treatment after that loss to the Sabres. So you wonder, what happened, on Wednesday, Thursday, the conversations between, Paul Maurice and his coaching staff, the conversations between Maurice and Chevy, Mark Chipman might have been involved there. Like, I think it's very hard to know exactly what happened. We're being given the version, obviously, that, the story that Paul Maurice and Kevin Cheveldayoff want to tell. And obviously, there's, I'm not saying that they're lying, but they're probably not telling us the whole story because it just doesn't make sense, guys. Like if Paul Maurice,
let me just stop you for a second. I know what Dave's about to say, but you're on mute, Dave, because you refused to unmute your microphone. The Manitoba Moose game tonight has been...
No, it's not just the game tonight, Drew. It's the games all through Christmas. They're Texas games as well. So all Manitoba Moose games, I just got a message from one of the guys. And so all Manitoba Moose games have been postponed. And through Christmas. So that means the games tonight in Iowa, as well as the 2 games in Texas. So they're due to COVID-19 protocols and related travel concerns affecting the Manitoba Moose. Their game at Iowa tonight has been rescheduled for January 19th. And the 2 games at Texas have also been postponed. The makeup dates have not yet been determined. And so the Moose, and the email says, the Moose continue to follow enhanced protocols at the direction of the team, medical staff, and the AHL. So I don't know what that means. That could mean that there were some more positive tests for the Moose, because obviously they had that one they were dealing with earlier in the week. And, what's interesting is that obviously they called up David Gustafson, and I'm assuming that, he had no issues, because they would have had him tested frequently. But as we know, you can be tested, and then something can come up. So obviously that'll play. And that talk about
it affects the Winnipeg Jets,
well,
certainly.
Especially with Evgeny Svechnikov and
David
Gustafson potentially injured. I mean, if the Jets, I don't know how they're going to play, because if you can't make a recall from the Moose, and we don't know the situation yet. That's all they've told us. And I was trying to do the show and was getting texts and responding to texts. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's kind of some breaking news there.
The Jets potentially could, if Svechnikov and Gustafson can't go tomorrow, and who knows about the recallability, which isn't a word, but go with me, of some Manitoba Moose players, the Jets might have to play shorthanded tomorrow against the St. Louis Blues. They'd likely go 10 forwards and 7 defensemen. Maybe you see Beaulieu play some shifts as a forward, but they would certainly be shorthanded if they're not able to call up any reinforcements from the Manitoba Moose, given the COVID news that has just broken seconds ago here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
We don't know, guys, for sure. As Dave mentioned, we'll look into it, and hopefully we'll have an answer, by the time the show is over. If not, we'll obviously post it on illegalcurve.com, but we're not sure that there can't be some type of emergency recall or, special exemption that's given under the circumstances, right? So that's just something to point out. The Jets still could call up somebody from the Moose, but it just depends if those players have to be... Right.
If the Moose are in COVID protocol, though, the Jets wouldn't want to be bringing somebody up who might have a COVID-related issue. And this is all clearly at this point in time just happening and too soon to know any of the particulars. But it's just another layer to add to what has certainly been a number of interesting happenings with regard to the Winnipeg Jets, with regard to the Manitoba Moose, and really the entire True North organization. Sorry, Ezzy, we interrupted you before. Go back to your previous thoughts as you were saying about the timing of the Maurice resignation yesterday on a game day, and how, what I was going to say is that, this Jets team, this whole franchise, remember, loves nothing more than controlling the narrative. That is almost their raison d'etre, is to control the narrative. So when the coach resigns on game day, I think that is largely, to some degree, to a fair degree, them trying to control the narrative around a coaching change. Not saying that it wasn't the right decision or that it wasn't the right move, but I do think it's not necessarily as wholesome as I reconsider it, as it maybe seemed yesterday morning at around 10:30 or 11 o'clock. As
that's a fair point, and I don't think many people were comfortable with the timing. I don't think anybody expected that, because you would expect it to have happened a day earlier, or maybe even 2 days earlier, when it was the first day of those 2 practices, right? So I don't think, it sits right with a lot of people. And, we talked about it. Chevy's comments, I don't think, did a lot to, let's say, squash the idea that, the Jets management had approached Maurice and told him that they were going in a different direction. They were going to go with David Lowry, and then they allowed him to resign as kind of a more diplomatic way of leaving the organization, if you want to call it that, right? So I don't think that, it's a conspiracy theory. It just doesn't happen very often, guys. Like, we touched on it a bit in the post-game show. Like, you just don't see, professional coaches resign like that. They usually get fired. And we're not just talking about hockey. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, Drew, you follow baseball and football more than I do. I mean, I follow it a little bit, but I'm more focused on hockey, and you just don't see that much. Like, it's, coaches are hired to be fired. So it's just rare. And, in terms of, the comments that Paul Maurice made, I mean, we kind of expected him to say certain things about how, he wishes, the team was in a better place. But I think the thing that stands out to me the most is how honest he was. And as I mentioned yesterday, saying that he, wasn't enjoying coming to the rink was something that's really surprising. So maybe, it is the best for Maurice personally to step back and, let Dave Lowry see what he can do with this team. Obviously, they weren't able to get the win last night, but it's not like the Jets are 20 points out of a playoff spot. They're still in it. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really sit right, 24 hours later. And I think we're probably going to be asking that question for a long time, Dave. Like, what happened in those couple of days leading up to Paul Maurice resigning that made him, make the official announcement just hours before the Jets were going to play a game?
I think that's a good point, Dave. I mean, to be a fly on the wall, of course, of the True North offices between the end of Tuesday's game and yesterday morning would be a very interesting position to have been in. But we obviously aren't that fly on the wall, and I'd be surprised if the truth versus the truth ever fully comes out. But it certainly is another interesting subplot to what has been I'm going to say a controversy-filled time period for the Winnipeg Jets, given their performance both on and off the ice, David.
Yeah, sorry guys, I was working the phones trying to figure out some stuff with the Moose and find out whether how that would impact any recalls and that sort of thing. So, it's like we talked about yesterday. I really do think it's it's the timing of this situation is very, very bizarre. And the idea that they didn't avail themselves of, but if that was the plan, like if that was the thinking of like, again, and we don't know, so we're just speculating, but if you're the owner / GM and you needed that long to mull it over and then talk to Paul Maurice, in theory, if you talk to him on Thursday night, like why? Like it just doesn't make any sense, because you put your whole thing, your whole organization into a very untenable situation. Because look, you can say whatever you want about being ready for the game, but that put everybody into a malaise almost after the way it happened, and the idea that Paul Maurice did it while the guys. I thought it was a rather bizarre picture, right? Because you're watching him speak, and then you're also seeing video of the Jets going through morning skate like it's a normal morning skate. And yet they know it's not a normal morning skate. So just the idea of doing it on a Friday of a game day I just don't understand it. Or not the Friday doesn't matter, but the fact that it was a game day is very peculiar to me. I can't, like I said, Paul Maurice has coached a long time, and sometimes you don't feel like coaching, but it wasn't as if he didn't spend the last 2 days preparing to coach that game. And even if, you have a flight of fancy on Thursday, you have to think to yourself, well, okay, I'll get through it. I'll get through the game, because I don't want to put the team into this negative position and then make this about Paul Maurice, which the whole day was about Paul Maurice, right? Like Dave Lowry obviously as well, but it all became about Paul Maurice. And it became the newsiest day, in one of the newsiest days probably in Jets 2.0 history. It's probably parallel it with maybe a Dustin Byfuglien situation, but it's as equally newsy, I would suggest. So yeah, I think that's a difficult situation for the Jets and for Paul Maurice and the whole thing. So that's the only thing. Like again, I don't think there's anything sinister. At least I haven't heard anything of that nature. But I just think it's curious. I just think the whole idea that you would choose to do that at that time doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because you had the perfect. You had the perfect avenue on the day after the Buffalo game. And even if you didn't want to make it look like you were, making the decision based on the Buffalo game, then you could have done it that night. And then they could have made the announcement the next day on a practice day. They could have either canceled practice or whatever. But I'm just saying, it's very curious.
It's almost like this whole franchise is terrified at the idea that they would be so mean as to dismiss a head coach. Like, I don't think it changes anybody's opinion. We welcome Scotty Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun into the show, who is apparently drinking a cola at 9:17.
No. This is Diet cranberry pomegranate juice.
Oh, okay. There you go. As long as you're getting some much needed
aspartame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I just want to make sure you're not
chucking it to my veins, right, Scotty?
That's right. That's right.
You know what I was saying, Scotty, and we'll let you chime in here. It's like, you know, to the point about the timing and everything, and the fact that he resigns as opposed to, you know, being fired. You know, if it was going to come to that, and it's apparent that it was going to come to that, you know, does anybody bat an eye? Does anybody consider Paul Maurice differently as a head coach, and his stint here in Winnipeg as a head coach any differently, or the organization in general any differently, if it was a firing as opposed to a resignation? I think they're getting so caught up in semantics and how they want to be viewed, you know, through some sort of, and I don't even know who it's they that wants to be viewed through whatever prism. They're so concerned about it that it was detrimental to their game last night, where a team that's in desperate need of a win was almost, not that they were sleepwalking through the game, but that they were dealing with this cloud of the coach leaving on a game day as opposed to 2 days earlier, or letting him coach on Friday and then doing it today if it was going to come to that, Scott.
Yeah, the timing was weird, and you know, I mean, are we arguing that they fired him and that this was just like here's a nice way to let you go, or like, you know, it was weird timing. I hesitate to, because of the timing, and I talked to Ezzy and Dave about this last night just in the press box. Like, I hesitate to say that they maybe. Yeah, well, you weren't there. So
we have a texting relationship.
we do. You know, but I'm thinking, like, if you're going to fire a coach, you wouldn't do it on a game day. So I don't get it. Like, I still have a tough time piecing together why it happened yesterday morning, why Paul Maurice potentially put his team in that kind of situation when he walked in. Now, I don't know the conversations that him and Kevin Cheveldayoff had in the months, weeks, and days leading up to it, as Chevy kind of said during his avail. But I just wonder, you know, if this is kind of like a Dustin Byfuglien sort of thing, where you got to work one day and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. And then that was it, you know, or maybe the day before, maybe that happened on Thursday. Maybe it was just how Thursday's practice went. I mean, Thursday practice, and I'm trying to think of, like, you know, what were the triggers here? Like, what was the final straw for Paul Maurice if he was going to, you know, essentially hang it up, right? Hang up the clipboard, I suppose, would be the saying here. But and you know, and when Wednesday's practice wasn't very good. It was, I mean, part of it was you just lost to Buffalo, and it was just kind of a quiet practice. They kind of got bag skated. Thursday's practice seemed back to normal, though. I mean, guys were chirping each other. There was a little more talkative. Yeah, like I it's just one of the things that I don't understand. Like that's one of the things on this is the timing. The timing was odd. Like, whether or not you were going to quit or you were getting fired, I'm not sure why they didn't just do it Thursday then. Like, maybe even just like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you could avoid yesterday. I mean, that was just the way the timing happened. You couldn't avoid it. And it was, yeah, I thought it was distracting for the team at night. Obviously, I think the players probably said as much. I mean, listen to Nick Ehlers. He hadn't even had a chance to talk about it with the media. Not that he needs to. But, you know, it's a weird morning. It's not a different morning. When your head coach is resigning as you're going onto the ice for the morning skate to play that night, it's a weird thing, right? Like, it's, you know, you're right across the hallway downstairs. There is the workout room, and then your coach is, you know, tendering his resignation. So it was just a weird day, and I don't understand all the pieces to it yet. And you know, I thought what Paul Maurice did yesterday was eloquent and classy. I mean, the way that he talked, he's very good talker. But I also thought there was honesty in it. I mean, you could see that he I don't know if liberated is the right word, but I mean,
there was a relief, I think.
He looked relieved when somebody asked him a question about lineups or whatever it was, and he's like, I don't have to answer that. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And that was an interesting thing. We've all been through a tough couple years. We've covered this team and watched kind of what they've gone through, and I go back to the 1920 season where you lose kind of half the right side of your defense, and all the things that kind of cascaded from that, and then COVID and all that. And I just wonder if Maurice just had enough. Like, it just got too much on him. He was struggling with the expectations of a team that he couldn't get to the level that he wanted it to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we'll ever know. Maybe he'll talk. I assume he'll talk about it one day. It's Paul Maurice. He's pretty good at that. But yeah, I just wonder if burnout got to him. It's been a long couple years here, and with this team, with the just everything that's gone on. I mean, there's so many little things that have gone on behind the scenes, and even in the public sphere. And yeah, I just wonder, did it just get too much? And when you don't think that you can do it anymore, he's one of the rare few, maybe, that can take a step back from the situation he's in and kind of make that decision. And it's a rare decision. I mean, I don't know if you guys have figured out the last coach to just kind of resign on his own accord and go from there. It's rare. And yeah, it was very interesting. It was an interesting day yesterday. And a weird one. I mean, like, I've been around this team since 2013-14, and it was a year before Maurice came. But this is like all everybody really knows in this town. I mean, how many people? I mean, there's people that remember Claude Noel, but Paul Maurice has been the face of this team in terms of driving it forward. I mean, all that stuff, draft and develop through this team when it got younger, right to the playoffs. There's a lot of history.
He's the only person on the team or representing the franchise. I mean, Mark Shipman doesn't really speak publicly at all. Kevin Cheveldayoff, when he speaks publicly, doesn't say anything. Yeah. So you're right though, Scotty.
He was the heartbeat almost, right? Like, he was the heartbeat of how this team was kind of. He
was the public face of True North.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
The public face of True North, and he was eloquent when he spoke publicly, and he spoke publicly, day in and day out. So now, I mean, you can't expect Dave Lowry to take on that mantle, I don't think, because he's never been an NHL head coach before. He's never been anything other than an assistant coach at the NHL level, and of course a head coach at the junior level. I don't know that there's necessarily a void, but that's, I think, to some extent why, to me, Lowry immediately ascending to the interim job for the rest of the year adds another layer of peculiarity to this whole thing, because I don't know that anyone necessarily said Dave Lowry, that's a guy who's waiting in the wings and who's immediately, who's ready for his opportunity to be an NHL head coach.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if this is sort of a good thing for the team. It's gone from, and I don't know Dave Lowry as a coach yet. I mean, I know what I've heard, people I've spoken with in the last 24 hours about kind of his style. But, like, I just wonder if, the whole waxing poetic thing that Paul Maurice did and all that stuff, he was very good at, sugarcoating bad situations. And sometimes you wonder, like, maybe this team just needed some brutal honesty. And maybe that happened in the dressing room. I don't know. But, you would hope that, the team has seen that there's been some challenges, I suppose, with trying to motivate this team and trying to not make it look like it's just kind of this veteran run team when you have players like Pierre-Luc Dubois and guys like that coming up that you kind of have to also hand the reins to. And I thought you maybe saw that last night just a little bit in Dave Lowry. If you look at the minutes, the disparity between Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois wasn't 6 minutes last night. It was 2.
Should never have been 6 minutes to begin with.
Right. But this is sort of my point. And I'm wondering if, out of this, like, it's a good thing for the Jets, because it's not just going to be kind of, let's not introduce a negative. No, like, let's try and figure out why these negatives are here and fix them, so you don't have to be, glossing them over or putting lipstick on them after a game, instead of, addressing the problems that existed with this team. And they are there. I mean, Dave Lowry said it himself, consistency is one of them. And we've said this for years. And even before, before Buffalo, when the Buffalo game happened, I'm sitting there and I'm like, a lot of these problems are still here. How many times have we talked about a Jets team not playing a full 60, a Jets team playing to the level of their opponent? All these things, right? I mean, we've heard of this. Mark Scheifele not back checking, Mark Scheifele gliding through the neutral zone when he should be skating some of his fastest strides to try and break up a play. These are all things, I think, that have more or less been ignored, I guess, by this team in favor of, I don't know if it's not hurting people's feelings. I don't know what it is. But, I mean, you look at it and you're like, it's been several years now since this team went to the Western Conference Final, and they've only seemed to have gotten worse, and this year is better than the previous 2 years or 3 years even. But at the same time, some of the same trends still exist with this team, and that's part of the issue. And so I don't know what Dave Lowry is going to do that's different. I think if you would have put in Charlie Huddy or somebody like that, even Jamie Compon, like, you would think, okay, well, this is just going to continue, right? Because you're putting in coaches that have been here a while. I think Dave Lowry will have a bit of a different perspective because he's only been here for a season and a little bit, like, let's say a season and a quarter or a season and a half now. But I think he still has I don't want to say he's tainted. That's the wrong word, but you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think he still has the ability to kind of separate what he's learned under Paul Maurice and also what he thinks this team needs to do. And I don't know. I mean, we're talking about one game on a day where he was hired the night before, what apparently out of the blue. But if you're going to start seeing less minute discrepancies for some guys and other guys playing more. I mean, we saw Adam Lowry play a ton of minutes last night. I know people make a big deal about this because Dave Lowry's his dad. They also had to kill off, 2 penalties in the first period, and Adam Lowry played a lot of that on the PK. But you just saw Andrew Kopp played more minutes last night.
Most time on ice of anybody in last night's game.
And so, like, I'm wondering, like, is that just a one-off? There was a hard match last night too. That Lowry line played Alex Ovechkin's line for almost a whole night, he had some injuries, obviously, and that kind of changed up things. But there was a hard match, and that line went out, and kind of, we were talking about in the press box, where was Alex Ovechkin after, maybe that first power play where he rings one off the crossbar? So, it wasn't like Alex Ovechkin was, the grade 8 5-on-5 as he has been for much of this year. I thought the Jets did a good job at kind of shutting him down, and that was just the hard match with Lowry's line. They were out there all the time. So, yeah, it's we have a lot to learn still about Dave Lowry and what do you mean. And that's what he has the interim tag. He has a lot to prove too, I think, in his first head coaching gig in the NHL. He's obviously done this at the in Western Hockey League level. But if you're looking for some signs of change out of a 60-minute hockey game, I would suspect that you saw a couple of them last night, and those are some of the changes that people have been clamoring for the most. And so we'll see. I mean, I think that there's a lot more hockey here before we can really put a final kind of review in or submit that. But yeah, it's interesting. So
Scott Billeck is our guest Saturday morning, bottom of the hour. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms, talking about the Winnipeg Jets, of course. Paul Maurice resigning as head coach yesterday morning. The team losing to the Washington Capitals last night. Dave Lowry, the interim head coach for the remainder of the season.
Scotty, how would you summarize the 8 years of Paul Maurice? Because everybody knows there was the run in 2018, to the West Final against the Vegas Golden Knights. So there's definitely been lots of ups and lots of downs with first and second round exits. So how would you summarize it from both a positive and negative angle?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the easiest way to sum it up in a few words is good but not great, right? Like, Paul Maurice came into this team at a time where I think they desperately needed kind of his message. Here's a team that was kind of, let's say, aging in terms of some of the old Atlanta players. And, it needed some direction. And it needed kind of, I forget the quote that happened. Was it Andrew Ladd? Maybe it was somebody else. But when Paul came in, it's like, this guy made us. Somebody said it. He's like, this guy made us, care about the game again, or something. It was something along those lines. I believe it was Andrew Ladd that said it. I'd have to go back, but it was something that was along those lines, and it was like, that was what was needed at the time. The team was. It was struggling, and it's like, I guess it was his fourth year at that point, something like that. And so he came in and on credit to Paul Maurice, I mean, he took a team that, he put them in the playoffs in that first year. But at the same time, the next year it was like, okay, we got to go back to kind of youth. It was essentially a rebuild, right? Mm-hmm. And so he went through that. I mean, a guy at that time would have had like 18, 19 years of NHL experience. Perhaps you don't want to go through a rebuild. So yeah, like I think that's what's admirable about what he did. I mean, he took some of the players and probably got the best out of them too. Blake Wheeler had 2 phenomenal years. They learned, a way to kind of use his vision and passing and all that. But there are also the faults. There's the downsides. I mean, it's 2021 now, and they were still trying to find Blake Wheeler a spot in the top 6. I mean, that was one of the things. It's been a long time that we've been talking about. Maybe he needs to kind of take a lesser role, and that cord never seemed to get cut. The lineup decisions at times, the veterans preferred over maybe some of the young guns. There's those things too. I mean, every coach has their faults, right? And every coach kind of falls back on their certain, philosophical kind of coaching, ideas when they're not doing good. So, yeah, like I think his legacy here is, I think he put this team on the map. I mean, if you look at the 2017-18 team, I mean, you can credit Kevin Cheveldayoff for this too, in terms of just drafting and the development process of some of the guys on the team. But, I don't think we can say that Paul Maurice didn't have his hand in Kyle Connor becoming the player he is, or Nikolai Ehlers, or all that. I mean, these guys were good, obviously, when they came in, but it's not like, Paul Maurice didn't have his hand on that. And so, it's those things. Like, I think you can be thankful as a fan for how some of these players have gotten to where they are. And then I also see at the same time why you would be frustrated as a fan, where some of those guys like Nikolai Ehlers isn't playing as much as you think he should. Even though the great skill that he possesses. And I think that's kind of where it was. Like, the line that always gets me is you don't hand the kids to the car keys to the kid at 14 or 16. I think he's said different years sometimes. And across the NHL, you've kind of seen that happen, though. And you've seen good teams who, Tampa Bay Lightning handed the car keys, the proverbial keys, to Braden Point, and look what he was able to do. And then there's you see this all across the league, and there's this youth movement, and you kind of wonder, the Jets did go young, of course, but did they give those young guys always the opportunity to kind of figure it out? And then, I look at the 2018-19 season and the second half of that season, what happened there, and why wasn't Paul Maurice able to kind of
sure right the ship?
Yeah, like corral whatever was happening there. Mm-hmm. And then from there, and then I think you have to give him credit. I mean, and obviously Connor Hellebuyck deserves a huge amount of credit for the past 2 seasons. One of them, he won the Vezina. The other one, again, without him, he wouldn't have been there. It's tough probably navigating, though, the fact that you lost your right side of your defense after one season and Dustin Byfuglien doesn't come back. And then you still kind of find a way to, rally your team. And I think the one thing that'll also be, remember about Paul is his players never really quit on him. I don't think you can really point to a time during his tenure here, no matter how bad it got at times, where his players actually quit on him. You see through some of these losing streaks, this team was, pushing quite hard for the win, getting a lot of shots, doing a lot of things. So that's an interesting part of it too. I mean, I think he had the ear of the players. I don't think he ever lost the room. I would concede though that maybe some of the players in the room weren't hearing the same message as other ones were, I suppose. But I'm trying to finesse this answer. But it's the way. It's the way that he coached that I think he's remembered for, the way kind of yesterday, even right up till the end, the class that he displays. But again, I think at the end of the day, like I said off the top, he was a good coach, but not a great one. And this team, I think right now needs a great coach to kind of put them over the top.
Scott Billeck, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. As I mentioned, we're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. Illegal Curve post-game show coming tomorrow afternoon following the Jets and the Blues right around 4:45 or so in the afternoon as the Jets look to get on the winning side of the ledger in a key division matchup against the team from Missouri.
Well, Scott, you need great coaching, but you also need great players. And right now, Mark Scheifele is not playing like the number one center for the Winnipeg Jets. And so I'm not going to say, cure what is the issue with Mark Scheifele, because if it was that easy, I'm sure he would try and resolve it. But what have you seen, given the year that Mark Scheifele has had, from a guy who, at the beginning of the season was talking about being on Team Canada, and there's still a big question mark to see whether there'll even be a Team Canada, isn't even on that radar right now.
Yeah, I'm interested, right? I mean, that is it's quite. I wonder how much COVID played a part into it. I guess that's always kind of my first kind of default answer. Mm-hmm. If a guy's had COVID, only because I covered this stupid virus for a long time and I'm tired of it, but I understand too kind of the effects that it has on people, and especially athletes, right? Because you go from being out 10 days. Or whatever, maybe you're symptomatic, maybe you weren't, but it's difficult to go from being a high performance athlete, having COVID, and then trying to be a high performance athlete again. Lots of guys have done it, right? Let's not get this wrong. Like, some guys aren't really affected by it, and other guys are. I'm not saying that Mark Scheifele wasn't. I thought when he came back, that kind of that Charlie horse that he picked up, I think it was Scott Mayfield's hit or whoever went knee on knee sort of with him. I think that one took him some time to kind of recover from too. So it's been a weird start for Scheifele's season. I thought he was doing pretty good during that 5-game point streak that he had. He was back with Connor and Wheeler, and they seemed to be buzzing around, especially in that Vancouver game before Wheeler kind of got injured. But the things that we saw early from Mark Scheifele, and I would kind of consider it buy-in, I suppose. Was that Mark Scheifele was back checking. I mean, there was times where he was flying back into the defensive zone, and then all of a sudden we're just not seeing that anymore. And that's the part about Mark Scheifele's game that not sure that we really understand. We've talked about this guy being an excellent two-way forward before, but that's not really the case at the moment. I mean, he's good one way. The second way he can be great, and I think he knows how to play that game. I don't know why he's not playing it.
Not even being great in that one way is as great as
right, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, we think of a guy like Alex Ovechkin last night, and I'll tie this into a point here. But here's a guy who, for the first 10 years of his career or whatever, was considered this player who was so good offensively and was just horrible defensively, right? But you could accept the bad defensive play because he was putting up 60 goals a year, right? But I think as with Mark Scheifele, I mean, yes, he's a point per game player, but Alex Ovechkin, during the season that they won the Stanley Cup, there was like this epiphany with him where it was like, okay, I need to play defense now. And I can learn, and he learned that playing defense doesn't have to sacrifice his offense. You can see that this year, the guy, and I know a lot of people don't like plus minus, but we're going to use it here just as a simple illustration. But going into last night's game, he was plus 19. He also had 46 points. He was 2 points off at that point, I believe, or 1 point off the league lead. And coming into Friday's game before the Oilers played, he was leading the league, and he's up there with goals. He's up there with assists this year, and he's not giving up a lot 5-on-5. And so here's a guy who has kind of taken, he's learned, I suppose, how to play that game, and it took winning a Stanley Cup, I think, or at least that playoff run too, where that was part of what is. Like, here's Alex Ovechkin playing a two-way game. Obviously, different positions. I get that. Alex is a winger. But my point is that, like, if you're Mark Scheifele and you're a student of this game and all that, I don't understand how you don't look at an Alex Ovechkin and say, hey, like, look at the success this guy's been able to have at 36, and he's also adapted to playing that 200-foot game. And so, I think that's part of what Mark Scheifele still has to get good at. And I think he's a great offensive player. I just don't know if he's a great player overall, because that defensive part of his game is kind of, it just hasn't rounded out yet. But you've seen it. You've seen flashes of it. It's not like he can't do it. I just don't know why he's not doing it.
We'll let you go on this last thought, Scotty. I'm of the opinion that whatever is ailing Mark Scheifele has something to do with the Jake Evans hit still. If you want to point to, I know I might be out on an island on this one, and there's no way of us knowing one way or the other. But to me, if you want to sort of pinpoint the line of demarcation, I think the blowback that he received and the horrendous behavior that was leveled at him and his family members and his loved ones and everything else, I do believe that I don't know how big or how small, but I do think that there is an element of that incident that is still impacting his game today on December the 18th. And I'm not sure, like I said, I could be completely wrong. And, more often than not, as everyone in this that's watching this show knows that I'm more often wrong than not. But to me, there's something about that still is lingering. And I don't know how that gets overcome, if it ever does get overcome. But for the sake of Mark Scheifele and for the sake of the Winnipeg Jets, who need him to be Mark Scheifele of the last couple of years, something needs to give in his game. And that's, I think, the coach is gone, the new coach is in. It's now on the players. That card has been played. It's now on the players to determine the next course of action. Quick note before we let you go, Scotty. This doesn't necessarily impact the Winnipeg Jets as of yet, but Pierre LeBrun reporting that there's going to be more. The expectation is that more postponements will be announced today, and that a league-wide pause feels inevitable. So when one of the insiders is saying something along that, then there might be another shoe to drop sometime between now and the next few hours. So we'll keep abreast of that. Scotty, happy holidays to you and yours, buddy. Hope you have as well, some time and can enjoy yourselves and everything else, and sort of keep your head up in the course of the relentless amount of COVID-related bullshit we're all still experiencing.
Indeed. Appreciate it, guys.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, Scotty.
Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays. Kwanzaa, I think that's one of them. Anyways.
Ukrainian Christmas, Ukrainian New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Let's
Chinese New
celebrate
Year.
all of them at the exact same time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Be well, buddy. Enjoy your cranberry. What was it? Cranberry pomegranate.
It's cranberry pomegranate.
There you go.
Aspartame, all that. So, anyways.
At 11 o'clock, you can add some vodka to it, and we won't judge.
Fair enough, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good one. All right.
You too.
Later,
Bye,
Scotty.
buddy. Yeah. Let's head to break. When we come back, more on the dismissal of Paul Maurice or the resignation of Paul Maurice, more on the hiring of Dave Lowry, more on the Winnipeg Jets. As he's about to be crushed by a piano, don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss that. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Ezra Ginsburg, the empty chair that used to be Dave Minuk. I'm not sure what happened to him. There he is. You know, better late than never, Mr. Minuk. Hopefully you're able to make the climb from downstairs to upstairs, in time for the next commercial break.
It was snack time for Dave M.
It was snack time for Dave M. I've never actually seen Dave eat, so I have trouble believing that he was noshing on something a little bit.
Dave just drinks. Everything that goes in his body is in liquid form.
Yeah, he's a liquid man more than a carb man or a protein.
Applesauce pouches for Dave, Drew.
Yeah, just like our kids, right, Ezzy?
Yeah.
Just when they're getting hangry, you got to give them an applesauce pouch. Is that how it works with you, Dave? He's just giving me a thumbs up. I'm glad he gave me a thumbs up. I thought he was going to give me a middle finger up there instead, but that might be coming soon enough. We continue talking about, of course, the Jets news, the loss last night against the Capitals, the game tomorrow against the St. Louis Blues, Paul Maurice out, Dave Lowry in. The Jets are right now in absolutely, I think, between now and New Year's Eve, assuming all these games happen, an absolute make or break period. The next 5 games are all against Western Conference opponents. You have The St. Louis Blues tomorrow afternoon, post-game show, 4:45 back here on our YouTube channel. You have Tuesday, Wednesday in Dallas and Nashville before the Christmas break. You come back, you got the Minnesota Wild and the Chicago Blackhawks and the Calgary Flames all before New Year's Eve. If this slide continues, the second half of the season, the post-New Year's Eve part of the season, very well may not matter for this team, given their performance as of late. This is, to me, gentlemen, absolutely the next 2 weeks what is going to determine if this Jets team is a viable playoff team come the second half of the season, or if it's simply a matter of playing out the string and this organization is going to go through a period of tumultuous times that they have managed to avoid really since, I guess, Paul Maurice had previously been hired.
They're still in the playoff picture now, but yeah, depending on what happens and if these games do happen, I mean, whenever the games do happen, they're going to have to string together wins. Like, everybody knows that. They had to string together wins before the game against Buffalo and before the game against Washington, right? Like, following the 3 of 4 points against Seattle and Vancouver, that was nice, but you had to keep going because we talked about it. You're 9 points back of Minnesota. You're 5 points back of Colorado, and Colorado has 2 games in hand. They're in fourth in the Central Division. So the Jets have gone from a team that we thought was going to be battling it out for first in the Central to a bubble playoff team right now, a wild card team, right? And yeah, the game against St. Louis, we're not sure yet. We'll have to, see what happens with some of these players. There might be some players coming back for the Blues, but the Blues have a bunch of players out. Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Klim Kostin. I mean, I think they have like 8 or 9 players out of the lineup right now. I think David Perron and Braden Shen are out of the lineup. So these are top 9 forwards for them, right? So, I mean, the Blues are going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage, but Craig Berube's done an unbelievable job, guys. Like, they have points in, I think it's 7 of their last 10 games or 8 of their last 10 games. So even though the Blues have had all these injuries, they're a very well-coached team, good defensively, and they've still got enough players that can hurt you, right? So, yeah, and then you talk about the 4 of the 5 games after that, Drew, against Central teams, right? So, I mean, it's going to be a Central heavy schedule. And yeah, you're going to have to bank some points here. I mean, not to say, if the Jets go, let's say 500 over the next 4 or 5 games, that doesn't mean the playoffs are, completely out of the question. But you definitely have to start stringing some wins here because you just don't have any other options. There has to be a huge sense of urgency against this Blues team tomorrow afternoon, if that game does happen, of course, because, this is a team that you're going to be chasing, this year until you pass them. So, I mean, these are huge points coming up against, especially the games against your own division.
Yeah, I mean, as he's eloquently summed it up there, Dave. I mean, it has to be now for this team. It should have been last night for this team. It should have been Tuesday night against Buffalo, but it wasn't. So it now has to be starting now. If you needed to go on a run, it needs to be against your Central Division opponents. Have you seen any indications based on last night's game? Obviously, Dave Lowry will get his first practice as Jets head coach coming up in about 2 hours' time. That this team is about to, is going to change the trajectory they've been on for the last month or 6 weeks.
Well, look, I mean, I know we live in an instant gratification society, so the Jets didn't win, so everybody is disappointed and already saying that Dave Lowry isn't suitable for the job. I mean, I don't know that. I don't think anybody knows that. He's been an assistant coach in the NHL for 7 years, or this is his 7th season. He has over 1,000 games played in the NHL. So, unlike Paul Maurice, who never played, pro hockey, I mean, that's not something that Dave Lowry folks can point at and say, you haven't been there. He had over 1,000 games in the NHL. So, I mean, he's got the pedigree as a player. He's been an assistant coach on clubs that have had success. So I think, it's early to be already suggesting that he's not suitable for the job and he can't handle it. I mean, last night to me is a throw because of everything that happened. That's why it happening on Friday morning, I think, was so bizarre is probably the only word that I would use to describe it, just because I think it threw the entire team off.
Yeah, the Jets played pretty well, Dave. Like, the first period wasn't good, but the second and third periods were fine.
Yeah, they were. It was an all right game for them, but I just think that they were thrown off as a result of everything that had transpired with the coach. And I'm not making excuses for the team because they need to win, but I just think like it's not a normal day at the office, guys. I mean, like that. I mean, and we talk about players being creatures of habit. I mean, these guys are like, automatons, for God's sakes. I mean, they wake up at the same time, they eat the same thing. They
Transformer.
Yeah, no, that's an that's an whatchamacallit? That's an Autobot. But anyways, the point is that they're very regimented, and so when you break it the way that it was broken yesterday, I mean, like I said, you don't need to make an excuse, but it's a pretty bizarre like explosion in the middle of your season. It's not like they fired the coach and you kind of expected, you were hearing it, because despite all I don't read what's going on in the news. All these guys have social media. All these guys hear things and they know that what's going on. So it wasn't as if there was a ton of chatter. Obviously, some folks were calling for it, but it wasn't as if it was like a daily occurrence on the, in the news. So like I said, I think you have to give Dave Lowry a little bit of runway here and say, okay, what is this guy going to do and how is he going to put his stamp on this team? So he's going to have a practice, as Drew said. We'll see what happens with the game tomorrow. And you're going to have, I mean, like I said, you can't expect him to put his stamp on a team in a minute. So he's going
and even if the Jets, sorry to Dave, even if the Jets won last night, that doesn't change much in terms of where this team is in the standings. Like, it's not like if the Jets won last night, they'd be second place in the Central Division, right? So you're absolutely right. They got it. Jets fans need to give, this team and Dave Lowry a little bit of time here. Like, it's going to take weeks here, not days.
I mean, to your point though, Ezzy, or to the point that we talked about, this isn't a Jets team that has the luxury of time. And that is probably unfair to Dave Lowry coming into the situation. Now, if you had told me 3 weeks ago that Paul Maurice was going to get dismissed or was no longer going to be the Jets head coach and the team would hire as the interim head coach for the rest of the season a guy who's never been a head coach at the NHL level, I would have thought that would be absolutely crazy. I just, that's not to say that Dave Lowry can't do the job, because I don't know if he will be successful or he won't be successful. I just find it to be an odd decision that he gets the head coaching job for the rest of the year.
Fine, but I mean, Drew, but at the same time, like, how many guys are retreads or have coached Absolutely. A million? Like, look at Alain Vigneault. I mean, he coached plenty in the NHL. Didn't do very much for a Philadelphia team that people expected to be pretty good. So, I mean, at the same time, you can always have a coach who's coached in the NHL, and it's amazing because it's one of those bizarre situations where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. People say, oh, like, how many times have you heard people complain? Oh, it's the same group of 5 guys who are constantly getting hired and fired and hired and fired, and then you have a guy who's never been an NHL. Well, how do you become an NHL head coach if you're not given an opportunity to be an NHL head coach? So, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like, like I said, if this guy had never played in the NHL, had no experience, at that level, I could see you saying, like, okay, fine. But, like, to me, I don't think the Jets are out of it. It's not so far gone that they can't allow this opportunity. Like I said, I don't know if he's the right guy, but who is? Who's this mystery coach who's coming to Winnipeg to take over this team that's gonna right the ship? Because, I mean, people always have an answer. Okay, so people are saying that, and I'm happy to read what people in the chat are saying, but, like, you have to assume that you can get them to Winnipeg, and that it's like it's a no doubter. I don't know that it's a no doubter to get coach insert name here to come and coach the Winnipeg Jets. So you have a guy who wants to be a head coach. I mean, when they brought in Dave Lowry, I kind of anticipated this was the way it was going to go anyways. I didn't think it'd be now. I thought Dave Lowry would take over for Paul Maurice, maybe after this next contract was done. But the reality is, like I said, I just don't know that there's a million coaches that you could fit in that A, want to come to Winnipeg, B, it would fit within this market. So you have a guy who, like I said, wants to be an NHL head coach, not under these circumstances. I just think that you can't just already say he's not suitable for a job. Nobody has any. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying that there's comments that people are making that would suggest that he's somehow unsuitable for the role. I'm saying he knows the team. He's been with the team since November of 2020. So he knows this team. And he's, like I said, he's got the experience. So you want a guy who, fine, he doesn't have NHL head coaching experience, but he's a guy who can say, when he tells a player, you have to play like this because this is what it takes to win. Well, he knows what he's speaking about. So I just think that there's a little more, you have to give a guy a little more latitude, or a little more leeway, And I just think like playing, having judged everything based on one game doesn't make any sense to me.
You're absolutely right. And let me make it clear. I'm not saying that that he shouldn't be given every opportunity and that he won't succeed, because he very well might succeed. Dave Lowry in his time was one of the, he was a terrific NHL player. He was a guy who did all the hard work and did all the dirty things that results in teams succeeding. So he knows more about hockey and will certainly, I think he'll be an asset to the Winnipeg Jets. I'm just surprised that that is the route that the Winnipeg Jets went when they made the decision to get rid of Paul Maurice, that they went with a guy who was on the bench and just slid him over. That is not what I expected if there was going to be a coaching change. Now, Dave Lowry is really, I think the team has put him into a very difficult position, because these next 5 games between now and New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, really make or break the Jets season. And he's going to have what? He's going to have a practice tonight, or a practice this afternoon. Maybe there's a brief practice on Monday before they leave to go on to the back-to-back. So this is a team that's about to play 3 games in 4 nights under a new head coach who's going to maybe get 1 practice to try and put his mark on the team. If he's not able to implement the systems he wants to implement or make that mark, then it almost might be over before he even gets the opportunity to do so. Because on New Year's Day, if this team's slide has continued, then you are not only are you climbing a mountain, you're climbing a mountain while wearing a boulder on your back. It's just a very, I'm not sure that True North has done what is necessary to put him into a position to succeed right now.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't think you put your mark on a team in 1 practice, Drew. I mean, I think it's not like Dave Lowry has to put everything into this 1 practice to put his mark on this team. Like, that's my point, is that I don't know that he's going to get the opportunity to put his mark on this team before it's almost too late this season. That is what I'm saying, is that maybe he is the answer. Maybe he has some solutions, but is he going to get enough time to try and implement those solutions before it's too late? Yeah, and it's up to the players now to get this on the right track. Like, there has to be a sense of urgency. Like, it's a cliche, but this is their season, right? Like, so yeah, it doesn't all come down to these 5 games, but these 5 games are going to be very important. Every single game is important because you're fighting for your playoff lives. Every single game isn't as important for the Minnesota Wild or the Carolina Hurricanes or the Florida Panthers, the teams that are at the tops of their divisions, right? So, I mean, yeah, it's do or die right now. It's not like Dave Lowry, has 72 games in front of him. He's coming in essentially a third of the way through the season. So in that sense, I agree with you, Drew. And, the whole notion of, people wanting maybe a more experienced NHL head coach, we just don't know if, first off, the Jets were interested in any of those coaches, or if the plan was all along, if Paul Maurice is going to be fired or resigned, then we're going to go to Dave Lowry. Ask Dave, Dave Minuk. 2 weeks ago, I said, if there's a change, it'll be Dave Lowry. Did I not say that? Right, Dave? So, I mean, like...
He's nodding, but the people on the podcast won't be able to hear that.
That's a good point. Yeah, good point, Drew.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, guys, I'm not the only one here. I mean, clearly Charlie Huddy and Jamie Compound weren't going to be, given that position for various reasons. Dave Lowry was the kind of next in line. So it doesn't even matter, in my opinion, again, this is only my personal opinion, but it doesn't even matter, what the motives or was there any other options? I mean, Dave Lowry is the coach. So like, I don't really care about, what other reasons or what other options there were for head coaches. So he's the guy that's, running the ship right now. He's the captain of this ship. And, this is a team right now that just can't afford, any more, significant losses. Like they just have to win some games here. So, we'll see. I mean, he is interim head coach though. I mean, that's the key here. It's not like the Jets, have given him a 3-year contract to be the head coach. So he has, 50 games here, and we'll see what happens in terms of, whether, the Jets are going to be able to, turn it around in terms of a long playoff run. I mean, I think, guys, we have to just focus on the short term here, which is putting some wins together. And again, it starts with St. Louis, and then, the back-to-back against Dallas and Nashville is going to be killer. But this is your season. Like, these guys have to look at it like, if we're going to turn our season around and, put ourselves back in a playoff spot, the best time to do it is right now. You can't wait until after Christmas to start putting wins together.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ezzy. The time to do it is right now, because if you wait, I mean, look, we know what St. Louis did a few years ago, but I mean, let's not get caught up in that. That is the anomaly of all anomalies. That
was like once in every 30 years, right, Drew?
I'd say
50 years,
60 years. I mean, that is not something you can count on. That's not something you can bank on. And it starts, and we talked about it with Scott, and it starts with Mark Scheifele. Look, Blake Wheeler is not going to be in this lineup for the foreseeable future. This team right now, after having been relatively healthy and still healthy on the back end, is clearly not at full strength. Who knows yet about David Gustafsson and Evgeny Svechnikov? We won't know that for a couple hours. The team practices at 12 noon this afternoon. Dave will have all the latest news, of course, on illegalcurve.com. And all the media availabilities and anything like that. And of course, you can keep it locked to our Twitter feed at Illegal Curve. But this team is not at full strength. So this is a time where you're now facing adversity. You're facing adversity in that you're struggling and you're not playing well. And you're facing adversity in that your roster is not at full strength. This is the time where you now have to rely on your top players. Because if Svechnikov and if Gustafsson are out of the Jets lineup, and the Jets, as a result, are calling up, if they're able to call up some players from the Manitoba Moose, you're calling up guys who have never been NHL regulars. And a lot of them, especially when it comes to the forward group, Dave, and you can speak about this more than I can, have never really been thought of as guys who are, the talent, Cole Perfetti notwithstanding, and he's with Team Canada, the talent in the Manitoba Moose that's expected to graduate to the NHL level is much more on the back end than it is up front. They got some nice stories with their forwards, but if all of a sudden, you're calling up a guy like Jeff Malott, well, Jeff Malott, if I'm not mistaken, Dave, was an undrafted free agent who signed an AHL contract last year, played terrific for the Moose last year, was a great story for the Moose, gets a two-way or gets an NHL contract this year. And so if he's the call-up, well, to expect Jeff Malott to be the person who makes a difference and gets this team, headed in the right direction again, well, that's not realistic.
Actually, I actually don't agree with you. I actually think that you could I'm not saying it's sustainable, but I actually think with those guys are going to play with a hell of a lot more heart.
But
at the same time, like I said, a lot of these guys can play at the NHL. Like, are they going to be huge difference makers? Maybe not, but I think that, guys like Austin Baganski or Christian Reichel or Mikey Esimont, look, they're not going to dominate. But guys, Mike Scarbosa had a goal and an assist against the Jets yesterday. I mean, he was a Manitoba Moose player, talented forward, not a great player, but an AHL guy who had some talent, and he scored a goal and an assist, right? So I'm just saying that, we poo-poo these guys who are playing in the AHL as not being able to be difference makers. How do you know? You don't know what Jeff Malott can do at the NHL level. He's never played an NHL game.
To be expected to come in as a difference maker.
I don't agree. That. It's like David Gustafsson. I didn't expect David Gustafsson to come in and score 50 goals for the Winnipeg Jets. He's not Kyle Connor. You have to know what you're getting. But Jeff Malott is a 6'3", 6'4" guy who's, I think, I saw something that said he's got the most inner slot shots of anybody in the AHL or top 5. I mean, wouldn't it be good to have a big guy who's willing to go to the front of the net and stand in front of the net and take shots from the inner slot? Not a bad thing. I'm just saying that. No. Drew. I'm not saying Jeff Malott is coming up and saving the Winnipeg Jets season. I'm just saying that in a short sample size, when you need some guys who are going to make an impact, guys like Jeff Malott, guys like Christian Reichel, guys who work their asses off every single day, aren't prima donnas. They're not gonna they just work. So, Austin Baganski, a guy who like I said, didn't look great to start the season with the Manitoba Moose, but has certainly turned it around and has looked better recently. And he's a guy who doesn't have a lot of NHL games. I think he's played like 6 games for the Blues. But the point is that there are guys who could, like I said, on a short-term basis, maybe come in and inject a little bit of life to this Winnipeg Jets team, which right now looks kind of lifeless, right? So, like I said, these guys have played like a team game, something the Jets, I said to Ezzy last night, was my comment to Ez was, it looks like a bunch of individuals playing, not a team. So if you have guys who consistently play a team game, we don't know the status of Gustafsson. We don't know what's going to happen with Svechnikov because he obviously was bothered, sat on the bench, got it looked at, went back on the ice, and then eventually left with 7 minutes to go in the third. So perhaps it's not that significant. And Dave Lowry said that they were going to be looked at last night. He felt like they'd have a better answer today. So if folks are asking, including Poopy Pants, who's asking when do you expect news on David Gustafsson in the chat, I think the answer
Hold on, is my son in the chat?
Actually, I thought that was you.
Yeah, I thought that was
that
you.
Ruben?
An alter ego.
Yeah. So anyways,
that's the beauty of YouTube. When you're on the radio, you don't know who your audience is. On YouTube, you know and can take pride in the fact that Poopy Pants is listening to the show.
Well, anyways, in answer to Poopy Pants, who looks like he's holding a pretty significant walleye in his photo, which is pretty awesome, I'm going to say that we'll hopefully have some sort of answer from interim head coach Dave Lowry after the practice. So probably around 1:00 is when you can expect to have some expectation of an answer and that sort of thing. So anyways, all I'm saying is that that's funny. Ezzy's burner count has now been revealed. So Drew, like I said, I'm not suggesting these guys are going to come and tear up the league. I'm just saying it's very, I think it's misinformed to suggest that a guy can't have an impact when you've never seen him play at the NHL level. So we don't know. I'm not going to say that they're going to tear it up. I'm just saying that you give a guy like Jeff, you saw enough in him last year to give him an NHL deal, right? An undrafted player from college, he got an NHL deal. Same with Christian Reichel. You signed him to a 3-year NHL deal, if I recall correctly. So you give these guys deals, you want to see what you have in them. So like I said, they're not going to come up. I didn't expect David Gustafsson to come up and score, 3 goals last night. I just expected him to be good 5-on-5, and if you needed him to be in the PK, play him on the PK. So, like I said, I think you can have guys come up from the AHL and contribute because they know it's an opportunity, and some guys will seize it. Some guys will say, "Here's my chance." They'll see there's a window. They'll see there's an avenue for them. And so, and Charles Shaw is talking about Mikey Esimon. There's a guy who scored some. He dealt with COVID. He's come back. He's contributed to the Manitoba Moose. So. Again, are there game breakers? You're not wrong. The defensive group, and it was ironic last night because all 6 defensemen, although Nelson Nogier, the former Jet, or he was a Jets draft pick, but an early one, not necessarily a prospect anymore, but he was playing forward last night because they're short staffed. And but every defensive player, Kovacevic and Sandberg and Gabanke and Chisholm and Heinola and Lundmark were just, draft picks that people are expecting could be in the NHL eventually. So, there's a lot more.
This feels a little bit like a Minuk Moose Minute.
It's inadvertently a Minuk Moose Minute. I'm just trying to suggest that, poo-pooing people from the NHL in the AHL is a mistake. I think it's short-sighted. I think that, like I said, there's a lot of expectation for the Moose back end, with good reason based on the pedigree. But I just think it would be an oversight to overlook the guys, like I said, Jeff Malott or an Austin Bagansky, Mikey Esimont, Christian Reichel, even CJ Cease. I mean, these guys are guys who can come up, be serviceable in the NHL. Over the long term, are you expecting 20, 30 games for them to be big producers? Probably not. But in the short term, when you need guys who are going to work their ass off, I mean, what are we talking about? What is this Jets team needed? It's needed guys who are willing to fucking work hard. It's you need a lunch pail mentality. So if you have guys who have literally displayed that, have one of the best teams in the AHL, like I said, notwithstanding the 2-game slide they're currently on, isn't that kind of what this team needs?
And that's what I think, one of the things that Lowry does bring is Lowry was not a superstar NHLer, all due respect. I think he would tell you.
Guy,
he was on the 2004 Calgary Flames, right? So who did he learn from? He learned from Daryl Sutter, right? I'm not saying that, he's a disciple of Daryl Sutter. I'm just saying he has that type of mentality, and his son is that type of player as well. Like Adam Lowry is a guy that can put the puck in the net, no doubt. He's not a 30-goal scorer, and no one is expecting him to be a 30-goal scorer. He wins faceoffs. He kills penalties. He lays the body. He drops the gloves if he needs to protect his teammates. Like, that's the type of player his dad was, really. And I think you've kind of nailed it, Dave. Like, now is not the time where you're going to score Trevor Zegras to Sonny Milano type of pretty goals. Like, you got to beat a Blues team that's playing really well, that is missing a lot of key players. 3 games in 4 nights. Drew mentioned it, right? Like Dallas, Nashville on the road. You gotta dig deep here and find ways to get points. Use whatever cliche you want here. Like, you have been an under 500 team for the last month. You have to string together wins, or you're just going to fall further out of the playoff picture. That's all there is to it.
Here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, we're not going to be poo-pooing players. We're just going to be putting up Poopy Pants' comments. Let's go to break. When we come back, much more on the Jets and the Blues. Chris Johnston joins us at the bottom of the hour. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
After the hour, back to the Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button. You can gently tap the like button, I suppose. It doesn't have to be a violent smash. That's up to you.
No. We want you to forcefully hit the subscribe and like button. There's no gentle tapping.
Okay, fair enough. As he's a bulldozer, he's a bull in a china shop, as really shouldn't come as a surprise to many of you if you've been paying attention to the show for much of the last 12 or so
If you have one of
years.
those big mallets that's used to, like, at the carnival to, like, hit the the bell and watch
Whack-a-mole.
the thing. Yeah, whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
If you have one of
Yeah.
those, that works.
Yeah, and stay tuned after the show for our newest parlor game, Whack a Ezzy, where you get to hit Ezzy with a giant mallet. It's fun for the whole family. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, rate us, review us, subscribe to us, whatever you want to do. We always appreciate the feedback from our loyal audience members. A reminder that tomorrow afternoon, 4:45, the Illegal Curve post-game show, back here to talk about the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. The Jets' next opportunity to get on the right side of the ledger after spending so much time on the losing side of the ledger. Gentlemen, what do you think Dave Lowry is going to do with the Winnipeg Jets lineup and his lines ahead of tomorrow's game against St. Louis? Is it too soon to see some significant changes to the roster? Let's assume, for argument's sake, that everyone's healthy. What do you think he's going to do? What's going to be his first sort of stamp that he tries to place on the Winnipeg Jets team?
Well, we kind of already saw it a little bit, right? Like, reuniting Kopp and Lowry together with Dominic Toninato on the third line. And then obviously, Scheifele, Ehlers, and Stastny as a line, Connor Dubois, Svechnikov reunited from earlier in the season, right? So, I mean, a lot of it is going to depend on, if there are significant injuries on that fourth line, even though, the fourth line hasn't played as much. So, it's kind of hard to really know because those lines look pretty good, I would say. I mean, I think, Andrew Kopp probably played a little bit too much last night. Same thing with Adam Lowry, but obviously, a lot of that has to do with the PK. But yeah, I think that is what I would say, Drew. I would expect very similar lines. And I think, it doesn't necessarily matter to me, who is on what line. Like they have to perform. They have to start scoring goals. Like you expect goals from Kyle Connor, Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, Paul Stastny. Like these are the guys, Andrew Kopp. These are the guys that are going to have to get it done. So I would expect probably these lines to stay together for the foreseeable future. I don't think you're necessarily going to see, the line blender from Dave Lowry in his second game as head coach.
Dave, what do you think? I mean, we've talked about that. The next 5-6 games for the Jets between now and New Year's Day are potentially make or break for the season. So when do you think he starts to implement some changes that he thinks this team needs?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would imagine if he sees something, he's going to do it immediately. Like I said, we'll see what happens in terms of who's practicing at noon today and whether what kind of impact that has. Look, I think I've been on record a long time saying that the Jets need to balance the way this team both scores and plays on the ice. And I think that Paul Maurice, if anything, showed a tendency to not use his fourth line. It was detrimental to the team. I think it was a flaw in his coaching. I think he also didn't give guys who probably merited it an opportunity, like a guy like, a Jansen Harkins, for example, who I think could have been utilized in a more effective way than he has been currently. I think he's a guy who has some potential talent that could be used. He's a cerebral guy. He's a hard worker. Again, his skating isn't necessarily top two lines-esque, but I think he works his ass off. And again, like I said, give him the opportunity. He may be able to surprise you. And a use of your fourth line in a more effective way, because, the way this team has done it, like they're sticking with that traditional top six mentality, whereas we know the league has gone to you have to get scoring out of that third line. And isn't it ironic when Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, and Adam Lowry were on that third line, they were getting it across the board, right? You had everybody sort of producing because they had balance. And that's the one thing the Jets tend not to do, is they tend to put too much weight into the top two and then leave the other two to just kind of hold water. Well, that's fine. But again, it's not an effective way, especially when the fourth line just isn't played enough. So to me, the number one telling stat will be whether the fourth line actually gets used, whether guys like, Jansen Harkins is being put into an effective role with, his potential line mates. I mean, to me, and I understand why Dave Lowry stuck with what had been run in practice and whatnot.
Yeah,
but I would put
changes that quickly.
But I would put Jansen Harkins with Adam Lowry and Andrew Kopp. I think that's a much more effective use. I think Vesalainen and Gustafsson have chemistry together. They played together a number of games in the AHL with the Manitoba Moose. I recognize the AHL is not the NHL, but the truth is, I just think that Harkins adds a more dynamic element. And I'm not trying to malign Toninato or, I thought he actually, as he said yesterday, he's been good. But I just think potentially to get yourself some more scoring, maybe do something like that where you have, Harkins up with those two guys, Toninato with a Gustafsson and a Vesalainen, and play them. Because the reality is, again, you need production, and those guys can produce. And especially if they're going up against other fourth lines, see what they can do, see what you've got. Because if you never do, if you don't have faith, if you don't trust them, and if you don't have faith in players, then don't use them. Get other players that you will have faith in. Claim guys on waiver wires if you don't feel you have someone at the AHL who can do it. So I think there are things that can be done to see what you have with this Jets team.
Wouldn't it be ironic, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit, if finally the Jets went up the middle with Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny, and Lowry, like everyone's been clamoring for since the Jets acquired Pierre-Luc Dubois last season from the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're pleased to welcome to the program the marathon man himself from the Toronto Star, TSN Hockey Insider, Chris Johnston joins us on the show now. CJ, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Good to see you. Sorry for this backlighting, but I'm in a hotel room and I've just got limited options.
That's quite all right. Trust me, most people would say of us that we shouldn't be lit as well as we are, but you're looking good this morning, CJ. Where are you? Which hotel are you in?
I'm actually in Toronto. It's just going to an event, and we're staying here after the drinking part of the night. So,
well, in that case, enjoy the good drinking part of the night.
It hasn't started yet, so I'm good.
We wouldn't mind if you drank during the show. There's been plenty of opportunities for Jets fans to want to hit the bottle as of late, given the struggles that the team has put forth recently. And then the other shoe dropped yesterday with the decision of Paul Maurice to resign as Jets head coach on a game day. I guess, CJ, your thoughts on just the timing and the overall tenor of Paul Maurice's departure as the Jets head coach?
Well, I was impressed by it, honestly. I saw a lot of self-awareness in Paul's words, and it's some humility there. And I don't think it would be easy to quit that job or any job of coaching an NHL team. And so I understand that in the marketplace he's been under some scrutiny. The team hasn't played as well as it likes. I mean, all that is fair. That being said, the fact that he himself was the one to remove himself from the situation, and I think the way he did it, that wouldn't happen even 5 years ago, I don't think, in the NHL. I mean, to me, it's a sign of, I thought he was sort of hinting a little bit at mental health type of issues there too, right? I mean, part of his message was about feeling that he couldn't take the team any farther and that it needed a new voice to get to the next level. But, he was also talking about his own struggles with enjoyment in the job and some of the things that went on. And so, I don't know anything more than what he said at the podium, but I just got the feeling that, he was making the right decision for himself and his family and the Jets. And I commend him for that. I can't think of many circumstances like it, frankly. And I know you could nitpick maybe about it being a game day, this or that. I mean, when you're facing a huge life decision, sometimes there's no perfect way to do it, right? It's not always going to be pretty and clean and neat. And, I do also think that a huge part of it was Jamie Compon coming back to the bench that, who knows, maybe if Jamie had been available all year and obviously dealing with his wife's health situation, maybe Paul would have coached the season. I think that's at least a possibility. And so, it's been a complex situation, and I thought all things considered, he handled it great.
So CJ, just one or two more questions about Paul Maurice, and obviously we want to get to the COVID situation and your colleague Pierre LeBrun's tweet about how it feels imminent that this might be a league-wide shutdown in the next couple of days. But when you look at this Jets team, we know that they're facing a mountain that they're going to have to climb. They're now battling it out for a wild card spot as opposed to first or second in the Central. But when you look at the situation the Jets are in, and Paul Maurice's tenure, but specifically the last couple of years with the first round exit and then the second round exit, Do you believe that one of the the narrative that Paul Maurice relied too much on some of the veteran players here, obviously Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, like, to you, is that one of was that what contributed mainly to his downfall, or is that too simplistic to say that?
Well, here, this is different for me, right? Like, I'm not watching every game and hyper focused on the machinations the way you guys are in the marketplace and the fans are. I didn't see that as much of an issue, but what's sort of consistently been an issue for the team, of course, is they just give up too much. I mean, they have good players. Like, I don't think there's any dispute about that, like, anywhere, like, there any debate. I agreed with Paul's sentiments, but it did seem to me that he couldn't find a way either to use them properly or have the right system or get the right things out of them to produce better results that should lead to more wins. And so I'm curious to see how, even though Dave Lowry's been on the staff, but how a fresh set of hands or eyes, controlling the steering wheel might change things there. I mean, Bruce Boudreau, look, Vancouver's benefits from some good goaltending from Thatcher Demko, but, like, you can actually see in the numbers that he's got that team playing differently, much more up pace and dictating some terms in their games. And they won their first 6 games with Bruce behind the bench. Like, sometimes these changes can affect pretty quickly. And so, I think that for me, it wasn't as much of relying on those veteran guys, but what they were doing clearly wasn't working. I'm not a huge all in on the numbers person, but when you give up the amount that the Jets have given up the last few seasons, like, it's impossible to have long-term success playing that way, even if Connor Hellebuyck is as good as he is. And so, I'm curious to see how someone fresh into the situation is going to approach that sort of challenge or problem. And it may mean playing some of those guys less. Maybe that's part of the answer. But the good thing is you have pieces to play with. Like, there's a lot of interesting things I think you can do with this lineup. It's not like you're locked into having only certain 4 guys that have to be in the top 6. I think that there's a huge opportunity for change and in-season change and to get right back in that playoff race.
Chris, I was of the opinion that Dave Lowry was probably going to be the heir apparent to Paul Maurice. I just didn't think it would be this quickly, perhaps. And, some are already questioning his ability. And I think he's got, especially given yesterday's situation, he's found out about it the night before. It wasn't as if he had a long time to plan for this. So you got to give the guy a little bit of a runway, I think. But what kind of reputation does Dave Lowry have outside of this market?
Well, I think he could be the coach beyond the season as well. Like, what's interesting for him, and maybe the challenge is he's getting thrown in now, and I don't know how much heads up he really had. Like, if he maybe had it in the back of his mind, this could be coming. It's hard to jump straight on a treadmill if it literally has caught him that much by surprise. But, I think how he performs in the next, 40, 50 games, whatever's left in the regular season, could impact him to be there. And, why not? What a great chance. Honestly, like, I think that we agree the Jets have underperformed, not grossly underperformed, but certainly, it's not like they were in the situation Vancouver was, where it was pretty apparent that they had to make some wholesale changes in their organization. And so I think that this is, Dave Lowry's got tons of experience. There's no reason this shouldn't work, really. I don't know a ton about his coaching style or anything like that, but everyone seems to speak so highly of him. And I really believe the Jets are approaching this so that if they have a strong finish of the year, if he shows growth, if he shows he can get something different out of the team, that this will be more than just an interim job. But now he's got to go earn it. And there's a lot riding on the line, I think, for players too. That's one thing that happens with the coaching change in season is all of a sudden established relationships are no more, right? Like, if you're someone who is guaranteed 20 minutes a night, that's not guaranteed under the new guy. You have to build a rapport with them. You have to show them you can do it. And I think some urgency gets born out of that uncertainty at times. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see Dave do it. If not Dave, I wonder about Pascal Vincent, longer term. Obviously, then nothing will happen in the next few months on that front. But, given his deep ties to the organization and I think the way they feel about him, he's someone they might look at too, next summer, depending on where they go with the full-time coaching job.
Chris Johnston of the Toronto Star, TSN Hockey Insider, podcaster. Did I get any other jobs that you have that I didn't mention there, CJ?
I feel like I got a few more than that, but I'll leave them off air.
Fair enough. Appreciate that. He's our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. It's a shame that we're still talking about this. Are you of the opinion that we're going to see a, however brief, shutdown, or do you think that the NHL is still going to try and chug through this, at least through Christmas and maybe New Year's, as it seems like, it's a flip of a coin if games are played on a nightly basis?
Yeah, this flat out sucks. I mean, let's call it as it is. I take no joy in this. We're 2 years almost into having variations of these type of conversations. I think it's very, very unlikely we're going to see the league be able to get all the way to the holiday break without having to pause the season. As we're recording this now or talking now, I don't think they've reached the conclusion, okay, we're going to have to stop at Monday or Tuesday or Sunday. But I think there's a general acknowledgement that they're running out of players. And this variant is spreading so rapidly. And that's what it's doing in wider society, too. It's not just an NHL issue. I mean, the NFL games this weekend are in somewhat of jeopardy, too. Other businesses are having to close down. But yeah, it seems to me there's going to be a pause. I don't yet know how long it'll be. I think one of the challenges of the pause, like I've seen a lot of sentiment on Twitter from people like, well, why don't they just stop it now and get a handle on it? I think the worry is you might stop it now. Let's just say for 2 weeks. That's my timeline. That's not anything anyone's told me. You come back in 2 weeks in early January and maybe it rips through the league again. Like, what they're trying to do, and I know this is grim business talk, but they're trying to play as many games as they can this season, right? They're trying to plow through a pandemic that's already materially impacted businesses in each of the 31 markets or 32 markets now. Every owner has lost money during this. They're trying to recoup as much of that as possible, and they're doing it in a circumstance where it's the global pandemic, and you just can't do it properly. And so, yes, there's going to be a pause. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to threaten the season. I certainly do now believe, too, the Olympics. I mean, the writing was starting to be on the wall for the Olympics just with some of the concerns the players had, but we might be getting into the territory now where the league itself is just going to remove itself because, those 3 weeks could probably be used to at least play some of the games, even though there's some building availability issues and other things.
I know you guys have talked about it on insider trading, but what are we looking at in terms of that 3 week chunk in February that was obviously put in place because of NHL participation in the Olympics? Like, is anything going to happen with that? Does that just become a kind of 3 week break for everybody, or is it possible that 3 week break is going to include games? Because as you just mentioned, there could be a 2 week break here in the end of December.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think because here's the problem, right? So a lot of teams or owners scheduled events in their buildings because they need to generate revenue. It's like having a house that you're renting. If no one's renting it, it's not good. And so, it's like you have a normal availability to just make a full schedule during that 3 weeks. So you're probably going to try to play some games, but then you say, what is fair? I mean, because teams have to be in shape. So let's say the Jets end up having to play 2 games in a 3 week stretch in February. I mean, how does the team stay in shape? What are the players expected to do? I think this will all kind of have to be bargained or worked out with the players union. I think that both sides, frankly, are aligned on this. I mean, they have mutual interest in trying to get this season in. But I don't yet know what it's going to look like. My sense is, though, it's not going to be a full 3 weeks of games the way any other 3 week period would be, just because I don't think that's going to be feasible. I'm curious, and I actually haven't asked anyone, so now I'm just speculating when I should probably be doing my job. But I wonder what'll happen.
Speculate wildly.
I'm just wondering what's going to happen to the All-Star game, right? It's in Vegas. It's end of January, first week of February. Could you cancel that and then play games then? Just as an extension of where the season is at that point, and at least play a little bit into that 3 week break. They're going to have to get creative because we went from. I mean, it really wasn't that bad. I mean, obviously, lots of players went in and out of protocol in the early part of the season, but you only had Ottawa had 3 games to be rescheduled, and the Islanders, and that's basically where we were at until the last week. And now I can't even keep track. I've lost track of the number of games that are being rescheduled, but it's a huge number, and eventually here the whole schedule is going to be paused. And so, and then what about travel issues? I don't know the scene in Manitoba, sort of the political climate in terms of lockdowns and things, but it's pretty clear here in Ontario, that's where we're sort of headed. Are they going to be able to cross the border again? I mean, there's a huge number of questions. And this honestly feels like March 2020 a little bit again. I mean, we're all more comfortable with the idea of this. I've been vaccinated twice. I've lived with it for 2 years. I'm not afraid of the boogeyman in the closet quite as much because I have a little better understanding of what's going on. But it feels like it's beyond the league's control again. That things are moving at a pace or speed that no one could reasonably pull off a season and be traveling all over the continent and stuff like that.
The hamster wheel keeps on turning. Chris Johnston, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You know Chris with his work, of course, as a columnist for the Toronto Star and as one of TSN's hockey insiders.
And Chris, the question, of course, of the Olympics and whether it'll even take place and whether the NHL would need that time, obviously, is still in the air. But, Robin Leonard spoke his mind and said how he wasn't going to go. Other NHL players now are speaking their minds. Connor McDavid didn't necessarily say one way or the other, but you can see it's weighing on these guys, the potentials to have to be stuck there. And I saw you tweeted about it a week ago. It feels like a lifetime ago, of course. But
yeah, it was last Saturday. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. But is that becoming more impactful? Are you hearing anything more from other players about the idea of, even if they are eligible, they're not necessarily going to go, and if they're going to take place, they're not going to go because of concerns?
Well, do you know what's weird is that through all of this concern, and obviously lots of players have valid concerns, a lot of players were still willing to go. Like to me, a surprising number of the top players in the world were willing to go to China. Despite being told there's 3 conference calls this week with the NHLPA with guys that are in consideration for Olympic teams. And they basically said, and I'm paraphrasing because I wasn't on the call, but I've been retold this, like, once you get on the plane, we can't really do that much for you. Like, we'll support you, we'll lobby for you, but like, you're going to a foreign country where, their government, their medical standards, what the ILC does, like they're in charge essentially. And despite hearing that, it sounds like a huge number of players still were willing to kind of roll the dice or take the risk, or at least be open-minded to taking the risk to going there, of course, because if they contract COVID while they're there. And as we've seen, it doesn't take much for basically like an eighth of the league to contract COVID in a week. Despite everyone's best efforts, despite protocols, despite testing, some things are almost not preventable when we're in this environment. That you might have to spend 3 to 5 weeks there in who knows what facility. I mean, they're trying to get that answer. Losing any game shape you had, trying to come back. I don't even know if you can play after that point. Potentially your NHL team doesn't have to pay you for your absence. It's a huge sacrifice to just want to play at the Olympics when, again, it's not going to even be a real Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. You sound like I went to Sochi and I went to Vancouver just in a journalist role. But those are 2 of the most fun experiences of my entire life. Even if you get to the Olympics as selling popcorn, you feel like you did something in your life. I know it sounds strange, but there's a special sauce. You can't help but reflect on where you came from, all the good things that happened in your country, all the great people that impacted your life to get you there. But part of that is sharing that with those people, right? I remember in Sochi, I was where after Canada won the gold medal, all of the parents are there hugging and partners and whatever, and they're celebrating the gold medal win together. Olympics kind of connects you to where you're from and the people that really matter to you. And so these players are already made the decision to go there knowing their families can't come to the other side of the world, essentially. They have no freedoms there. They can't travel. They're not going to sightsee. They're not going to walk the Great Wall of China while they're there. They're literally going to be in very Spartan hotel rooms by what, NHL players are used to, and going to an arena and playing games and practicing, and that's it. Anyway, it's a long way. It's really hammered home to me how badly these guys want to be part of the Olympics. It's not just something they say in an interview and then don't back it up. The fact they agreed to the original protocols, which were already not great, kind of against the PA's wishes, if I mind you too. And then they're still willing to go when they could risk anyway, whatever they're risking by going to China right now. These guys still want to go. And so my best guess, Dave, unless the NHL totally just gongs it because of what's going on right now, is we'll see not true best on best, but we'll see a surprising number of the best players go. And then obviously some individual people, maybe those with kids, whatever, will withdraw. But, I still think you could see Sidney Crosby go under these, under these conditions, for example. I heard he's one of the real drivers that wants to do this and understands could be his last time. And I don't know, it's pretty powerful.
Chris Johnston covers the NHL for the Toronto Star as a columnist. He's one of TSN's hockey insiders. CJ, always appreciate your time. Always appreciate your insight. Happy holidays to you and yours. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
And also, CJ, make sure you mix some water in tonight.
Oh, I am. I got the coffee going now. I'm already hydrating. You know, this is the new world. Like, changing all my jobs was hard, but you know, normally I would be going, like, almost at this time, to the studio and spending the whole day with Elliot Friedman and worried about headlines. Now I get the odd Saturday night to revel. So that's what I'm going to do.
And I'm sure that you miss Elliot woefully on a night like tonight.
Well, I don't miss the work parts with Elliot, but I do miss seeing him as much as I do. But we're in touch all the time, and he's still a great friend. So, you know, friends over workplaces, if you know what I'm saying.
I hear exactly what you're saying. CJ, thank you. All the best. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Yeah, be safe.
Take care. There he goes. Chris Johnston, TSN hockey insider, Toronto Star columnist.
I feel like Chris always comes to us from various locales. He's always like in a different sort of setting. I think last time he was in his kitchen.
Well, there you go. He likes to move around. He likes to keep us guessing as to where he's going to join us from. Let's take our last break of the day. This is our final Saturday show of 2021. We're going to be off on Christmas Day, as you might expect. Let everyone spend some quality time with their family, but much more to come, and post-game shows will continue unabated as well. Stay with us. One final segment for Saturday mornings in 2021 upcoming. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
All right. righty, it's one final segment for Saturday mornings in the calendar year 2021. Where has the time gone, my friends? But here we are. Post-game shows, as I
It's
said,
been on the
will
post-game
continue.
shows. This is where it's been.
It's true. The time has been spent on the post-game shows. You're right. Post-game show tomorrow afternoon, right around 4:45 or so, after the Jets and the Blues. Post-game shows on Tuesday and Wednesday, as well as the Jets head to Nashville and then they head to Dallas before they wrap up their pre-Christmas portion of the schedule. We'll see if those games happen. Of course, the latest news will come to you on our website, illegalcurve.com, assuming there isn't any breaking news in the next 10 minutes before we wrap up this morning's show. Keep it locked, as I said, to illegalcurve.com, of course, for an update from Winnipeg Jets practice, where we'll hopefully find more about the health status of Evgeny Svechnikov, the health status of David Gustafsson, ahead of tomorrow afternoon's contest against the St. Louis Blues, a St. Louis Blues team that the Winnipeg Jets are certainly looking way up at in the Central Division standings. The Blues 17-8-5 on the season, good for 39 points. The Jets 13-11-5, good for 31 points, a game in hand the Jets have on the St. Louis Blues. The time is nigh for the Winnipeg Jets to turn their season around. They've made the first move. If it's going to be a domino effect, time will tell. If the players don't respond accordingly, it very well may be a domino effect. But the first move is the resignation of Paul Maurice as Winnipeg Jets head coach, the hiring of Dave Lowry as Winnipeg Jets interim head coach for at least the remainder of the year. And now we wait and see about this Winnipeg Jets team and how they move forward from now until they're either in a playoff spot or no longer playoff bound for the 2021-22 season, gentlemen.
Yeah, and it's going to be, not only is it going to be an important game, I think it's going to be a really interesting game, not just with, what's happening with, Evgeny Svechnikov and David Gustafsson, but, according to Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic, there might be some players coming back for the Blues. But, we talked about it, even without Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas, Jaden Schwartz, Braden Shen. Jaden Schwartz is on Seattle. Sorry, guys. Even without those players, they've put together a really impressive stretch here where we talked about it. They have points in, I think they're 6-1-3 in their last 10, something like that. So they've been really solid. Drew just mentioned the record. They've got a nice cushion in the Central Division right now. So obviously, the Jets, want these points because they don't want the Blues to go even further, up the standings. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game. The Jets and Blues are very familiar with each other, even though they didn't play each other last year. I mean, they've had some epic battles over the years. This Blues team is always good defensively, even without Alex Pietrangelo back there. I think we know that Torrey Krug is a pretty good darn defenseman. So this is a absolutely crucial game in which the players have to step up that you expect to step up. And we don't have to mention those players. Everybody knows those players. So hopefully David Gustafsson is going to be able to play on that fourth line. They're going to need him. I mean, the Blues are a team, as opposed to the Jets that do roll four lines. I mean, they have, going back to the year they won the Stanley Cup. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough test. 3 games in 4 days here against Central Division opponents. But, this is why you play hockey. I mean, you play hockey to win hockey games, right? So I think the Jets have it in them. And Dave Lowry is obviously going to do his best to have them prepared for tomorrow afternoon's game. And obviously there is that kind of, and this isn't a reference to the Rollies transfer, moving and storage, but there is kind of that piano hanging over everyone's head. The piano being, the potential shutdown.
How many people is this piano going to crush?
Yeah. Well, COVID is, I mean, obviously, being metaphorical here, COVID is the piano. So we'll see if that, all these games do get played, but regardless if they do get played, I mean, the Jets are going to have to put together a string of wins here, whether it's before the Christmas break or after it.
Yeah, it's very well said there, Mr. Ginsburg. I mean, this Jets team, this is it. This is, this is an absolutely crucial stretch, and Dave Lowry will get an opportunity. He'll get an opportunity to prove that he should be the long-term head coach for the Winnipeg Jets. And, if it's not an immediate flip of the switch, that doesn't disqualify him from having that role. But this team, as we've talked about, has used up that buffer and then some. That 9-3-3 start is a long, long way in the rearview mirror, and they no longer have that as something they can hold on to. So it is up to the players. It is up to Mark Scheifele predominantly. I mean, Nick Ehlers was flying out there. Pierre-Luc Dubois has done what people wanted of him this season. Kyle Connor is more than a point-a-game player. The target, the bullseye, is on Mark Scheifele. He is the one who needs to elevate his game to try and get this Winnipeg Jets team back on track right now, Dave Minuk.
Yeah, and two former teammates going at it in Craig Berube and Dave Lowry, so that should be a fun exercise for them, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, look, I mean, like I said, I think that Dave Lowry is entitled to have a little bit of runway, but I think the reality for this Jet season is, this team needs to start performing now, and whether that's bringing in guys from the AHL who are going to be motivated and they're going to work their asses off and maybe help bring some of that attitude towards, the rest of this Jets team. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, we're winding this show down, but as Drew has indicated, illegalcurve.com, we're rolling 24 hours a day. We're always up to date. So,
but you can't complain about being tired and how exhausted you are because there's no Moose game tonight. What? So you get a night off when you didn't think you were going to get a night off, Mr. Lazy.
Yes, that's true. Although I don't think I last I checked, I don't think I ever complained that I was tired. Even though some of us may have been working till after 2 a.m. last night, unlike others who were fast asleep.
If you want to get in touch with Dave M, he'll be at Thermea tonight.
But anyway, so look,
Dave M's spa night.
Yeah. So I think that this is a Jets team that knows their reality, right? We talked about it. You've given up your window, your buffer, all that's gone. These games against Arizona, against Buffalo, against the Islanders, although at the time you can't. It's funny. It's always like people like they lost to the Islanders. The Islanders are terrible. Well, the time the Islanders weren't terrible. Now they haven't been very good. But that's because they got the Ginsburg curse. But the point
it's still hard for me to believe that the Islanders are as poor as they are standings wise.
Yeah,
that's on the side.
I do agree. It's funny when I was looking at the Metro and I was like, how are the Islanders in last? Like, it makes no sense. But
well, I'll tell you how, because they have 54 goals in 25 games.
Thank you.
That's the kind of
analysis you come to.
They can't score. For. No, but honestly, they can't score.
No, that's true.
They're still a great defensive team. Like, none of that has changed.
Yeah.
They're averaging 2 goals a game.
Yeah. So anyways, but the reality, look, so this Jets team is going to have to figure out their identity. And look, Dave Lowry spoke about it. He wants them to be faster. He wants them to work harder. Well, that's good. Get this team doing that, because that's what you need to be doing in order to have success at the NHL level. And it's one thing to talk about what you need to do to have success. It's another thing to show it. And so, this Jet team, look, they played well for flashes yesterday. You can't play well for flashes. You need 60-minute effort. And like I said, maybe these guys en masse need to come down. The capacity requirements won't preclude them from watching a Manitoba Moose game, which we don't know when that next one will happen at home. I believe the next one is against Abbotsford, which would be December 30th or 29th. 29th, I believe, actually.
Yeah. Then they play New Year's Eve, of course. That's usually the game.
That's the 4:00 game for New Year's Eve. For the record, we have tickets for both. I have 4 tickets for the 29th game, and I have 4 tickets for the 30th game. So, or is it 30th, 31st?
New Year's Eve is on the 31st this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that would make sense. But
December 30th is gate night.
No, that's October 30th.
Yeah, sorry. It's the 30th.
Come on, lighten up.
30th, 31st for those Moose games. But we do have some premium tickets. So we'll get those out at some point. We'll run some contests and get those out for folks who want to go check out the Moose. The next generation, of course, still won't have Cole Perfetti. May have even less guys based on what happens with Evgeny Svechnikov and David Gustafsson later today. So we'll have that up to date on illegalcurve.com.
And with that, we say thank you to everybody for joining us on this Saturday morning. Also want to say a big thank you to our sponsors. They make this show, they make the post-game show, they make the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Bernstein's Deli, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and our newest sponsor, Grid Park. If you have a business or if you know of a business that should be a sponsor of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, get in touch with one of us. We want them on board our terrific roster of sponsors. Want to remind you, if you haven't already done so, smash the like button on your way out. Smash the subscribe button. Subscribe to us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast. Leave us some comments on both. Rate us, review us, give us some feedback. We always like to hear from you, our loyal audience members. We thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday morning. Reminder, next Saturday, no show, but we'll be back tomorrow afternoon with the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Blues as the Jets look to get backing on the winning track and give Dave Lowry his first win as Winnipeg Jets interim head coach. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Merry Christmas, everybody.